So I have attorney Sandy Yeung with me today. Sandy, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me. Good to see you.
So Sandy, you are my go-to immigration expert and attorney that I always turn to. So I wanted to have you on to answer some questions that, us in the criminal world always are worried about, and I think a lot of clients have a lot of concerns about, but we just don't have the expertise like you do.
Oh, well, you are my person for criminal law cases. That is for sure.
So, Sandy, I do a lot of white collar crime. So, when a person is being charged with embezzlement or some type of fraud, what
Mm.
type of consequences can that have in immigration court?
It depends on a variety of things. First of all, it depends on the person's status. If the person is a US citizen, then it's not such a huge worry. But if there are other statuses, then it's a little bit tricky. If they have valid status currently, or if they are a green card holder, a legal permanent resident, those are things to consider.
So we're starting to see a lot of charges. Maybe not this administration, but the last one. They were charging people, for example, with like espionage, and some people might be U.S. citizens. Some people might be on student visas, while other people might be on some other type of status that's like a continue. I don't even know what the visa name is. That's why you're here. But it's kind of like a after school. It's kind of like a temporary work visa or something of that nature. It
Yeah, an
seems like.
OPT. A lot
There
of
we
people
go.
it's on a student visa. So they're after you graduate from college, usually you get a 1 year to do internships and things like that. So that's one valid status that you can have.
Great. So yeah, so where a person gets charged with such a crazy sounding crime like that, what type of effects does immigration have? Do they grab them right away, or do they kind of wait until the criminal case plays out?
Um, it depends. Sometimes they will issue a detainer, and in that case, this person will be detained while the criminal case is ongoing. A lot of times, it depends if it's a very serious crime. It also depends on what kind of crime it is. If there's violence, a lot of this white collar crime that you talk about. The issue that brings to mind is like the fraud element of it,
Yes.
or if there's a huge amount of money that's involved and things of that sort, anything that's serious felony. And that's what I know.
Right, right.
Those are the things that I would worry about. Yeah.
And I'm certainly not talking about, most cases. I would say the overwhelming majority of cases that I come across, people don't have a status issue and they're not immigrants or anything of that nature. But
Mm,
there is a portion that we see that people are accused of crimes
yeah.
and their statuses might be a little different. But what about that? We were talking about where the cases might be involving a lot of money in terms of fraud and maybe some
Mm,
embezzlement. Maybe there's some counterfeiting going on. Maybe there's some money laundering going on with the companies.
oh.
What happens in those situations? Do you see ICE tend to come grab them right away, or is it they generally wait?
Um, it depends. And there's a lot of change coming on with this new administration too. Every administration has their priorities on how they would spend the enforcement during COVID, especially. So it depends. So right now, a lot of the people who are being detained by ICE, generally there's a violence aspect to it.
Right.
Also, if they've been involved with some kind of gang involvement of sorts, those are the things that they're mostly interested in. There's also a way currently for us to sort of to ask for a review about whether someone should be detained. There's a better process now under Biden, but we're still sort of testing it out. There's the memo, but you kind of have to sort of figure out how to go about it. So we're testing it out, but that's what the memo tells us. It's the
Right,
new
right. So
thing.
let's just talk about logistics. Whatever the crime is, we can just kind of make one up to do a hypothetical. Individual gets arrested, maybe for like a gun or drug charge. Maybe maybe there might be some like money laundering going on, and then ICE grabs them for whatever reason. Maybe they're illegal reentry.
Yeah.
They're just a target. Where do they go? Do they get detained in Boston? Do they get shipped to Texas right away? Where's the body actually go?
It depends. Most of the time, it's kind of tough because during COVID, there were a lot more issues with where people can be detained. So I have had cases where I ship people to Miami or some other
Oh wow.
places. I think it's partly due to their capacity here. But in non COVID times, people tend to be pretty local. I mean, I can reach them. I mean, for your side, I guess the issue is whether whether ICE will get your client to court for the appearances that they need to
Exactly.
be in. Um, Sometimes that there's issues there, is what I've heard. Do
Extreme
you
issues.
see
Like we're
that?
having a tough time. Yeah, we had a lot of issues through the years, especially where a person gets moved pretty quickly through the system. Um, it seemed like that was somewhat country specific, right? If they were from a particular country, it seemed like they were being moved
Yeah,
faster, just from anecdotally speaking. But it was just kind of weird that once they're kind of in a different state, it's really hard to get them back.
it's really, really hard. And I think sometimes a lot of, in the past, recently it's been issues with capacity. And then I don't usually go outside of Massachusetts, but, there are some people who are in New Hampshire. But yeah, sometimes there are people who call, they're like, they got shipped to Louisiana or some of the places, or the families need to look them up. There is a website where you can find folks, but it is really hard to talk to someone that's in Miami. It's just really hard.
Right. So what's the first thing that you do? You check their status, try to find out where the body is? How long does it take you to find them where the actual person is?
Um, Normally not a whole lot of time. It usually takes, I would say, like a day at least for like the processing to happen. If someone would say, "Oh, someone had to go to Burlington," or like someone from
Right.
Burlington, usually they would show up on the ICE website within like a day or so. Then you can find out what location they're in. At least you can find out what the hours are if the families want to visit. How do you get info to them? How do you go about visiting them? Yeah.
And then from there, so you're looking at the detention order, right, or the detainer.
Yeah, that would be the first thing to look at. Like, what's the reason for and then just gather information from everybody outside. Who are the relatives? If it's someone who can make bond, then it's sort of a determination. Well, what are their ties to the United States? List all the relatives for me. Tell me how this is a great person in the community. Family photo, kids photos, birthday photos.
Yep.
Records, all of those things. And then sometimes, if it's like really certain things, it's hard to make bond. So you have
Yes.
to sort of make it some
So
kind of determination there.
so does so how long does it take for them to have a resolution to their case, especially if they can't make bond? Does their cases move faster if they can't make bond?
Um, yes and no in a way, because if you can't, there'll be a bond determination, and then you can also request that at a later point as well. Then if you can't make bond, then they're still going to be putting you up before an immigration judge, where very much a criminal case, you have to say, well, these are my reasons, what are your reasons that will allow you to stay? What are, if you have petitions that are pending, if you have people who we can file petitions for you, or if you're qualified for any other kind of immigration benefits, then we'll figure it out to see what track you're in.
I see.
And
And
then
then
for some people, there's just really no other option, and then we just have to figure out, well, what would you like to do? You
with
may
every
have to go
yeah,
back to your home country.
right. With each case being obviously unique. But in terms of what is the shortest time period that you see people being able to resolve their cases, and what's the longest time period that you have seen?
Immigration court is a very different calendar than criminal court. It's hard to say. In some cases, people who you do get put, once you're in custody, you are in a slightly expedited calendar in a way. So you have the bond hearing within a certain number of hours. You can, but if you're not in that category, it could take a long time for things to resolve. I mean, there's about, I forget, 850 or however many thousand cases that are backlogged in immigration court. And so
Yes, yes.
if I have a new case right now, it will take us, a year and a half, 2 years before I get a date before an immigration judge. So um, for people who are in custody, they are on a slightly different calendar. But if they don't make bond, it's a little tougher.
So they can sit in custody for over a year waiting for their hearing for it to even be resolved.
They try not to, but things happen.
Right. Well, Sandy, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on. And it sounds like when they should be calling you is when they're being detained or they have any issues like that. But do you do also other things with immigration too when people aren't in trouble?
I do, when folks, there are folks who need to go to immigration court, and there are folks who are just, wanting to have a relative come and live with them or petition for families and things of that sort. Sometimes I also do some VAWA cases. Those are special folks who are victims of domestic violence. And so there's some special benefits that apply to them as well. And then I also do some family law cases too.
Wonderful. So I know you speak both Cantonese and Mandarin very well. So you're an excellent attorney, and I'll definitely keep sending cases your way.
Oh, thanks, Jason. Thank you for the referral. Have a good one. Take care.
Take care now.